In 1933, a man was handed control of one of the most advanced nations in the world. He didn't take power overnight. He wasn't hidden, and he didn't do it alone. So the real question isn't just how Adolf Hitler rose to power, it's why an entire country let him. Because long before the speeches echoed across packed squares and long before the flags filled the streets, something had already shifted inside the people. This wasn't a sudden collapse. It was gradual, almost quiet at first, like a slow change in the air that few could fully explain. A nation that had once believed in order and structure found itself lost, searching for direction after years of instability. Jobs disappeared, savings became worthless, and the future felt uncertain in a way many had never experienced before. In moments like that, people don't just look for leadership, they look for certainty, for someone who sounds like they understand their anger and their fear. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Adolf Hitler understood that better than most. He didn't begin as the obvious choice. In fact, there were many who dismissed him early on, seeing him as just another voice in a crowded political space. But he had something others didn't. He knew how to connect emotion with message. He didn't speak in complicated terms or distant ideas. He spoke directly to the frustration people carried every day. He spoke about lost pride, about betrayal, about restoring what had been taken. And for many listening, it felt like he was putting words to feelings they couldn't express themselves. What started as curiosity turned into attention, and attention slowly turned into belief. Not overnight, but step by step, rally by rally, speech by speech. And here's where the story becomes even more difficult to ignore. The system around him didn't collapse immediately. It adjusted. It tolerated. It underestimated. Political leaders believed they could manage him, that his influence would fade or be controlled once he was brought closer to power. Some saw him as useful. Others saw him as temporary. But almost no one, at least in those early moments, truly understood how far things would go. The structures that were meant to protect the country didn't vanish in a single moment. They weakened gradually, often through decisions made under pressure, fear, or calculation. What makes this moment in history so important isn't just the outcome, but the process. Because Adolf Hitler didn't force his way into power in the way people often imagine. He was given opportunities. Doors opened. Support grew. And with each step forward, resistance became harder, not easier. By the time many realized what was happening, the landscape had already changed. The rules were different. The balance of power had shifted in ways that couldn't easily be reversed. So when we ask why no one stopped him, we're really asking something deeper. We're asking how ordinary people, institutions, and leaders all played a role, whether intentionally or not, in allowing that rise to happen. Because this wasn't the story of one man acting alone. It was the story of a nation moving, piece by piece, toward a future it didn't fully see coming. And the most unsettling part is how familiar some of those patterns can feel, even today. Was it fear? Was it manipulation? Or did millions truly believe in what Adolf Hitler promised? Because to understand how he rose to power, you have to go back to the version of Germany that existed after World War I, a country that looked stable on the surface but was quietly breaking underneath. The war had ended, but for many Germans, it didn't feel like peace had begun. It felt like defeat had followed them home. Soldiers returned not to celebration, but to uncertainty. Jobs were scarce, money was unstable, and the sense of national pride that once held everything together had been shaken in ways people struggled to put into words. The treaty that followed the war placed heavy burdens on the country, and for ordinary citizens, it didn't feel like a path forward. It felt like punishment. And in that environment, something important started to happen. Conversations changed. The way people talked about their country, their leaders, and their future began to shift. Frustration turned into anger. Anger searched for direction. And when people are searching for answers, they don't always look for the most accurate explanation. They look for the one that feels the most convincing. Adolf Hitler understood how to step into that space. He didn't just talk about problems. He offered explanations that were simple, direct, and emotionally powerful. For many, it felt like clarity in a time of confusion. But clarity can be dangerous when it oversimplifies reality. Because what happened next wasn't just a rise to power. It was a series of decisions, reactions, and missed opportunities that, together, changed the course of history. Adolf Hitler didn't act in isolation. He was supported by people who believed in him, tolerated by those who underestimated him, and enabled by systems that failed to recognize the risk early enough. That raises questions that are still difficult to answer. Who gave him that power? Why didn't the system stop him when there was still time? And if you had been there, living through that uncertainty, hearing those same promises, seeing the same struggles around you, what would you have done? Before he became one of history's most feared leaders, Adolf Hitler was a nobody. He wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't initially seen as extraordinary. And for years, he drifted through life as a failed artist, a wanderer, and then a soldier returning from the horrors of war. When he came back to Germany, he found a country in ruins, a nation struggling to pick up the pieces after the devastation of the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles had left Germany humiliated and burdened with impossible reparations, its borders redrawn, its economy shattered, and its people feeling betrayed by the very leaders who had promised security. Hyperinflation made money worthless almost overnight. Families watched as their life savings vanished, sometimes literally carrying cash in wheelbarrows to buy the simplest necessities. For millions of ordinary Germans, life wasn't merely difficult, it was hopeless. Children went hungry, men wandered the streets searching for work, and women feared for the stability of their homes. In moments like this, people don't simply look for someone to lead them. They search for someone who seems capable of restoring order, pride, and purpose. They look for a savior, and Adolf Hitler, with his unwavering confidence, his clarity of message, and his ability to speak directly to the fears and frustrations of everyday Germans, began to fill that void. His voice, once insignificant, started to resonate with growing intensity. And for a nation teetering between despair and desperation, that voice became impossible to ignore. Adolf Hitler didn't seize power with tanks or armies at first. He built it, carefully, deliberately, step by step, through speeches that stirred feeling and rallies that grew larger with every passing month. He created a momentum that seemed unstoppable. At the center of it was the Nazi Party, a political movement that began small but tapped into something far more powerful than sheer force. It tapped into emotion. Adolf Hitler understood that fear and hope could be manipulated together, that frustration could be redirected toward enemies, real or imagined. He gave people someone to blame for their suffering, whether it was political leaders, foreign powers, or communities singled out as outsiders. He gave them pride in a nation that had been humiliated, and most importantly, he gave them hope that things could be different. But this hope was entwined with anger and fear, creating a perfect storm of obedience and passion. Streets that were once ordinary became arenas of violence and intimidation. Political opponents were harassed, threatened, and silenced, while ordinary citizens witnessed the breakdown of the fragile democratic structures around them. Then came the Great Depression, a worldwide economic collapse that hit Germany with brutal force. Millions were unemployed, businesses shuttered, families went hungry, and the anger that had been simmering under the surface found expression in rallies, marches, and rising support for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And then, in February 1933, the Reichstag fire occurred, a single event that would accelerate everything. The parliament building was engulfed in flames, and fear spread faster than the smoke. Authorities quickly blamed political opponents. and emergency powers were enacted almost immediately. That fire didn't just destroy a building. It shattered the last barriers protecting Germany's fragile democracy. Within weeks, decisions were made, laws were passed, and the nation moved into a reality that would never be the same again. What began as a slow, careful rise had turned into a force sweeping across the country, and the consequences of inaction were becoming impossible to ignore. After the Reichstag fire, fear spread like wildfire across Germany, and Adolf Hitler used it with precision. Emergency powers were enacted almost immediately, suspending civil liberties and giving him authority that no one could challenge effectively. Political opponents were arrested. Voices that had once spoken freely in newspapers, parliaments, and public squares were silenced, and a sense of uncertainty gripped the nation. But here's what most people fail to realize. Adolf Hitler didn't destroy democracy in a violent overthrow. Instead, the system itself, through a series of legal decisions and votes, handed him the power he desired. The Enabling Act of 1933 became the turning point. Elected officials, many believing they could manage or control him, voted to give Adolf Hitler total control over legislation, effectively allowing him to rule without checks or balances. Some thought this move was temporary, that it would expire once stability returned, that the emergency powers were just a tool to get through a crisis. Others believed they could manipulate him, using his growing popularity for their own advantage. But all of them were wrong. With each passing day, his authority solidified, his influence expanded, and the foundations of democratic governance crumbled quietly, almost imperceptibly, as the nation allowed itself to believe that this concentration of power was necessary, inevitable, or even harmless. And as ordinary citizens watched from their homes, unsure and afraid, the machinery of control began to operate fully, leaving very few options for those who might have opposed him before it was too late. The real twist in this story is not that Adolf Hitler acted in the shadows or forced his way into power. He didn't rise in secret. He rose in plain sight, in front of everyone, in full view of the nation and the world. Millions of Germans supported him openly, attending rallies, saluting, cheering, and voting for the promises he made. The propaganda machine he built amplified his message relentlessly, saturating newspapers, radio, and posters with images of strength, pride, and unity, all carefully designed to appeal to emotion rather than reason. Yes, fear played a role. Fear of instability, fear of communism, fear of being left behind. But belief was even more powerful. People wanted to trust him. They wanted to believe that he could restore Germany to greatness, and they were willing to overlook the warnings and the consequences that were already becoming clear. Adolf Hitler didn't just take power by force. He was given it by a nation desperate for certainty, by leaders who thought they could control him, and by ordinary citizens who wanted to see their country rise again. It was a surrender disguised as consent, and that is what made his ascent unstoppable. He didn't seize control in a single moment. He accumulated it, step by step, vote by vote, cheer by cheer, until the country that had once been democratic handed him the keys to everything. And in that transfer of trust and authority, the fate of a nation, and eventually the world, was sealed. By the time the world realized what was happening, it was already too late. Adolf Hitler had consolidated power, and the machinery of the state moved swiftly to enforce his vision. What began with speeches and rallies escalated into policies, then into actions that would plunge Germany and ultimately the world into a conflict unlike any before it, World War II. Cities burned, families were torn apart, and millions of lives were lost. Yet the most unsettling truth isn't only in what Adolf Hitler did or the devastation he caused. The real tragedy lies in how ordinary people allowed it to happen, how millions consented, cheered, and followed, often out of hope, fear, or a desperate desire to believe in something larger than themselves. These weren't monsters or villains in the abstract. They were people, just like anyone else, with families, jobs, and dreams, who made choices that enable the darkness they may not have fully understood. It forces us to ask ourselves a question that echoes through history. Would you have seen the warning signs? Or would you have believed the story, the promises, and the narrative too? Before we end, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. What do you think? Was this inevitable? Or could Adolf Hitler's rise have been stopped if different choices had been made? Let me know in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and your thoughts on this story. And if you think this story is shocking, wait until you hear what happened next in history. Make sure to subscribe to Global Real Uncovered for more stories the world tried to forget, so you never miss the truths that history sometimes hides.